Hello, Majesty. There's a kind of strength you feel like you have to have. But it's wearing you down, isn't it? You wake up every day trying to keep everything from falling apart. Your job, your home, your relationships, yourself. On the outside, you seem unshakable. But on the inside, you're holding it all together by a thread. And the scariest part is that no one sees it. Because you've learned how to hide it so well. But what if the problem isn't your fragility? What if it's this distorted idea of strength? What if feeling is actually the way to real protection? Today, I want to show you what few people are brave enough to teach. How to access your true emotional strength, the one that comes from your soul, not your performance. Inspired by Carl Jung, we're going to explore pain, the shadow, the unconscious mind, and discover that being whole is far more powerful than just appearing strong. 1. The desire and the burden of being unshakable. Strength has become a role that many of us play. The woman who handles everything, who doesn't cry in public, who solves what no one else wants to deal with. But behind that script, there's a price. Disconnecting from our true emotional selves. We learn to function, but we stop feeling. And little by little, we forget who we really are. No wonder so many strong women secretly feel empty. Because that strength, Majesty, is often just a beautiful but heavy armor. The real question is, who are we trying to seem unshakable for? Who are we protecting? From what? Society taught us that feeling is weakness, that vulnerability is instability. But no one told us that this false strength pulls us away from our feminine self-awareness. You might be able to carry the world on your shoulders for a while. But who carries you? Who holds you when the weight gets too heavy? The truth is, the version of strength we've been sold doesn't free us. It makes us sick. But there is another kind of strength, one that doesn't demand perfection or control, one that comes from the clarity of knowing what you feel, even when no one else understands it. That's what we're going to talk about from here on. And what comes next, Majesty, might turn your world upside down in the best way possible. Because maybe the answer isn't in being stronger, but in allowing yourself to be whole. 2. The invisible and silent emotional pain. You know that woman everyone admires? The one who gets everything done, who's strong, practical, efficient? Well, sometimes that same woman is falling apart inside, and no one sees it. Because the emotional pain she carries has no shape, no color, no blood. It's a silent kind of pain, and that's what makes it so dangerous. And the cruelest part is, the more she holds it in, the more invisible she becomes. The stronger she seems, the less freedom she feels to fall apart. Majesty, there's a kind of loneliness only those who pretend to be okay can understand. It's that feeling of being surrounded by people, and yet feeling completely alone. Because how can you ask for help when everyone is so used to your strength? This is one of the most subtle traps in a woman's emotional life. We're taught to be everything for everyone, but no one tells us that it can swallow us whole. What no one says is that the cost of this emotional performance is incredibly high, and it always comes due. Society doesn't teach us how to feel. It teaches us how to hide. When we cry, we're called weak. When we speak too much, we're called unstable. When we stay silent, we're called cold. All the time, they're trying to shape our emotions into something that's comfortable for others. But meanwhile, the pain stays there, asking for attention, asking to be heard. And if it's not seen, it starts to scream, sometimes as anxiety. Other times as chronic exhaustion, suppressed anger, or an emptiness we can't even name. And all of this is just the beginning. 3. The illusion of control. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Powerful, right? And deeply true. Most of us are guided by emotional memories we no longer even remember. Childhood wounds, unresolved trauma, subtle messages we absorbed for years. All of it makes up what Jung called the unconscious mind, and it's this inner layer that shapes how we feel, react, choose, even when we think we're in control. The big illusion is believing that if we just try hard enough, we can control everything, our emotions, other people's reactions, the future. But control, Majesty, is just a fantasy we cling to for safety. The woman who's always trying to be perfect, who avoids conflict at all costs, who pushes herself to be her best version, is often just running from old wounds. That's not strength, it's emotional survival. And guess what? The more we try to control, the more our unconscious controls us behind the scenes. Imagine following a GPS, but it was programmed by unhealed trauma. It keeps leading you back to the same pain, the same patterns, the same relationships, where you constantly feel the need to prove yourself. That's what happens when we don't understand our inner world. Jungian individuation. The path of deep emotional healing for women begins with the courage to look inward. And the truth is, everything you try to control on the outside is just a reflection of what's still unresolved on the inside, and that realization, it changes everything. 4. When pain wants to speak. Many of us were taught from a young age that feeling is dangerous, that showing sadness means you're weak, that expressing anger makes you unstable. So we train ourselves to swallow everything until the body starts saying what the soul wasn't allowed to. Anxiety, panic attacks, emotional outbursts, unexplained physical pain. That's what happens when emotion doesn't find a healthy outlet. It becomes a symptom. Healing emotional trauma begins with one act of courage. Stop running from what hurts. Carl Jung understood this deeply. Emotional pain is not a mistake. It's a messenger. It shows up to reveal where you've abandoned yourself, where you betrayed your truth just to fit in. When you repress what you feel, you're telling yourself your truth doesn't matter. But shadow work teaches us that everything we reject still influences us. Repressed anger becomes rigidity. Suppressed sadness turns into apathy. Silenced fear transforms into control. And all of that erodes emotional resilience for women. Integration is the opposite of repression. Integration is creating space for all your inner voices, even the ones you've learned to silence. It's when the wounded woman and the wise woman sit at the same table. It's when you realize you no longer need to split yourself between who you are and who you think you should be. This is the foundation of feminine self-awareness, to stop fighting yourself and start listening. Because pain isn't trying to punish you. It's trying to wake you up, and that awakening is closer than you think. 5. Integration as the way out. You don't have to harden yourself to feel safe anymore. That armor you've been wearing for so long, maybe it protected you once, but now it only weighs you down. True strength doesn't come from shutting down. It comes from clarity, from knowing what you feel and allowing yourself to experience it without letting it destroy you. How to be emotionally strong isn't about blocking emotions. It's about learning to dance with them. Because yes, Majesty, you can feel without drowning. You can suffer without losing yourself. You can cry without falling apart. The way out is not to split yourself. It's to unite. Integration is the name of that path. When you welcome all your parts, the brave woman and the fearful one, the loud one and the quiet one, the one who loves deeply and the one who's been hurt too much, you stop living in pieces. That's the moment you stop adapting to the world and start creating a world you actually belong in. It's about making peace with your shadow and realizing it holds keys that the light can't reach. Spiritual growth. For women begins right here, in the encounter with what's been pushed away. The whole woman isn't perfect. She's honest with herself. She knows when she's in peace and when she's betraying herself. She no longer needs validation because she's found belonging within. Emotional healing for women is this return to self. And believe me, when you integrate your pain, it stops screaming and starts guiding. And if this already stirred something in you, just wait until you discover what it truly means to become who you really are. 6. Individuation as a journey of truth. Jung said that individuation is the process of becoming who you are. Sounds simple, but it's one of the most challenging journeys anyone can go through. Because to become who you are, you have to stop being everything you were taught to be. You have to take off the masks, break the roles, question the script. Individuation is a soul calling, and it often begins the moment you refuse to keep living for other people's approval. This is when many women finally wake up, when they realize they've spent a lifetime trying to fit in, to please, to survive. When they realize they lost themselves in expectations, demands, and shoulds. And then comes the emptiness, but also the possibility. Jungian individuation doesn't require perfection. It requires truth. It invites you to reconnect with your essence, that part of you that's never been touched by performance, that's always known what it wanted, even when you forgot. And in doing that, you reconnect with an inner strength that no one else can take away. It's in that reconnection that a new kind of strength is born, one that doesn't depend on circumstances, praise, or permission. It's quiet, but immense. It comes from the peace of being who you are, from looking in the mirror and finally recognizing yourself, from saying what you mean, feeling what you feel, and making choices that truly nourish you, even if others don't understand. When you start living whole, the world may shake, but you won't break, and this strength, rising from your roots, will protect you in ways you never imagined. 7. Consciousness as emotional shield. True protection doesn't come from closing your heart. It comes from opening your eyes. When you develop emotional awareness, the things that used to hurt you now teach you. The triggers that once overwhelmed you now reveal your inner patterns. Because when you know yourself, you protect yourself, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Spiritual growth for women begins when we stop reacting on autopilot and start responding with clarity. Consciousness is like an inner lighthouse, illuminating even the darkest corners of the soul. You know that comment that used to shake you? That situation that left you anxious? That criticism that tore you down inside? With awareness, everything changes. You begin to recognize the triggers, the patterns, the emotional ghosts that used to guide your behavior. This doesn't mean the pain disappears, but it stops running the show. As Jung said, when you bring light to the unconscious, it no longer works against you. You stop calling destiny what was actually just a lack of understanding. Those who live on the surface get shaken by every wave, but those who dive deep find stillness, grounding, and strength. Awareness gives you a new kind of freedom, one that doesn't depend on the world being okay, but on you being centered in yourself. It doesn't make you untouchable, but it makes you unbreakable. Nothing external can destroy what's been rooted and restored from within. And now, Majesty, with all this light turned on, it's time to bring it all together into a new way of living. You're not broken, you're awakening. Everything you've felt up until now, the pain, the doubt, the exhaustion of pretending to be strong, was life guiding you back to yourself. And now that you understand your shadow, your unconscious mind, your cycles, there's no turning back. Emotional healing for women is not a final destination. It's a sacred process of remembering who you are. A woman who feels, who thinks, who transforms, who no longer lives to shrink herself. Majesty, I invite you to do something now. If at any point something within you stirred, write this in the comments. I choose awareness. This isn't just a phrase. It's a vow to your soul, a reminder that you choose clarity over control, wholeness over perfection. And if you want to continue this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and deep emotional growth, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's a next step waiting for you, a video that will expand this conversation even more. Stop living for others. Live for yourself. You'll find the link in the description, and I'll also leave it recommended at the end. Majesty, you are incredible. See you in the next video.